is a very special planet which is rich in its natural beauty. But unfortunately, it is changing with the ever-increasing needs of humans. The world's landscape and environment are changing. Hello, my name is Gary Wheatley, and I have a few realities I believe the world's population needs to face. The first reality is global warming is real, and it has the potential to do a lot of damage to our planet, and it may end up eventually endangering the human species. A major driving force to global warming is the continually growing demands of our soaring population. Let's take a closer look. This is a graph of the world's population growth rate from the 13th century through to the 20th century. The population of the world slowly increased at a steady rate all the way up until the 18th century, which is when it reached its first 1 billion people. It then started to increase at a more rapid rate, and in the last 85 years it has gone from 2 billion people to 7 billion people. This is a very dramatic rise in population growth. At the same time, we invented the petrol engine, and so carbon started to increase into our Earth's atmosphere. It actually rose at a very similar rate, or in a very similar pattern, to population growth. They're both obviously linked. The more people there are on the planet, the more carbon we produce into the Earth's atmosphere. Because of the increased temperatures, the world's ice is beginning to melt. If all the ice was to melt, the planet would become extremely hot, and the human species would become an endangered species. As I said, the major driving force to carbon and global warming is our soaring population growth. Amazingly enough, our world leaders, after 19 years of preparing for the Copenhagen Global Summit in 2009, did not have population growth on their agenda. Our world leaders should be ashamed of themselves for avoiding the issue. If we are to help reduce global warming, it requires a coordinated effort, not only to find and use cleaner methods of producing energy, it also requires us to slow down the world's population growth rate. If the world's population was to triple yet again in the next 85 years, our population would total 21 billion people. An extra 14 billion people will require a lot more power and food to be produced, 3 times what we are consuming now. I have written this book called Population Time Bomb, which delves much more fully into the problems and possible solutions to global warming. One of the solutions that I've suggested in the book is that governments don't encourage people to have large families. An American couple was featured in the news in 2011 when they were expecting their 20th child. They already had 19 children. When interviewed, they said they were leaving it up to God to decide how many children they would have. Let's have a look at the scenario of what happens when you have 19 children as opposed to only having 2 children. Okay, this is the scenario of what happens. If 2 adults have 2 children each, it becomes 4 people. If those 4 people have 2 children each, we have 8 people. This is a fairly normal scenario. But if you have 19 children, they grow up to be adults, and they have 2 children each, it equals 38. If they have 2 children each, it becomes 76 people. So 76 people opposed to 8 makes a big difference. If we all followed the example of the American couple and we all had 19 children each, 19 by 19 equals 361. And if those 361 had 19 children each, we would have 6,859 people. That's a massive difference to 8. This is a clear example that we need to be responsible citizens when it comes to childbearing. Religion, or believing there is God, is a problem when it comes to population growth. I'd like to read this article to you, which is in my book. In 1997, the Vatican stated, "The Church has always taught the intrinsic evil of contraception, that is, of every marital act intentionally rendered unfruitful. This teaching is to be held as definitive and irreformable. Contraception is gravely opposed to marital chastity. It is contrary to the good of the transmission of life." I am a great admirer of the United Nations, which helps to bring us together as a global community. And like most people, I really love the Olympic Games, which also helps to bring us together as one large human family. In truth, we're all from the same family, the human family, and it is as a human family that we need to tackle the problem of population growth. Unfortunately, over the centuries, religion has divided us into different groups: Muslims, Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, whatever. And every time we get divided, it creates problems in our global community. Just have a look at the news if you want to find out. Recently, in the news, there was 3 Ahmadi Muslims beaten to death by an angry mob of Sunni Muslims. And then the Sunni Muslims went down the street chanting, "Allah is great." I often think of John Lennon's song, Imagine. Imagine no religion. If we could take religion out of the global community, we would all be brothers and sisters. In the human community, man's best friend. Uncomplicated, simple, not like humans. Do you believe in God? Hey? Do you believe in God? Are you Buddhist? Muslim? Hey? Christian? I don't think so. They're very, very simple, uncomplicated, not like us humans. All the problems religion has created, and the silly thing is, it's all over a God that doesn't even exist. How can I be so sure of that last statement? Well, in my book, I have given many logical and realistic reasons why I'm so sure, but I'm now going to add to those reasons in this video. Let's start though with something that is in my book. One of the beliefs of Islam is, whatever God wills to happen, happens, and whatever He wills not to happen, does not happen. And a basic Christian belief is, God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere. Basically what they are saying is God is everywhere. He is powerful, and whatever He wills to happen, happens. In our educated world, we read in newspapers or see on the news tragedies which are happening every single day around the world. They include fatal car, motorbike, train and plane accidents, rape, murder, terrorism, earthquakes, tsunamis, cyclones, and of course there are also people dying of starvation. Okay, so God is everywhere. God is powerful. What God wills to happen, happens. If this is true, if God is everywhere, why doesn't He stop these tragedies from happening? Starvation, poverty, and the general tragedies, tsunamis, etc. from happening. If you were God, would you not wish for no starvation? Would you not wish for no poverty? Would you not wish that these tragedies did not happen every single day? I'm sure you would. And so would God, if God actually existed. There are only three realistic possibilities why God does not stop these tragedies from happening. God is too weak, God does not care, or there is no God. Let's look at number 3 first. There is no God. I believe this is true. I believe it's a random world, and we all need a little bit of luck to navigate its course. If there is no God, then obviously he cannot stop the tragedies from happening, which is why they do keep on happening. This is logical and realistic. The second option, God does not care. If God is everywhere, he has been watching these tragedies happen for centuries, or since the beginning of time. You would think he would be sick of watching them by now. And the final possibility, God is too weak. If this possibility is true, then it makes a mockery of the fact that God is supposed to be all-powerful. If he is too weak to help, then he is a mere mortal, the same as the rest of us. Maybe you believe God has been testing us. If God has been testing us with these terrible tragedies and events for centuries and causing pain to so many people, he is not someone you should be worshipping. Another unrealistic possibility is God wants to give us free will. Does this give God good reason to sit back and watch an infant starve to death? If a child was drowning in a swimming pool, would you let the child drown because you want the child to have free will? I don't think so. As I said, there are only 3 realistic possibilities, and the only one that is totally realistic and logical is number 3. There is no God. Let's take a quick look at one of the world's tragedies, the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers in New York. The terrorists who were flying the planes, they were supposedly Muslims. And even though they knew that they were going to be killing many innocent people, they were also convinced that upon their own death, they would be welcomed by Allah into paradise. Surely I'm not the only one to think that this is crazy thinking. It is not logical or realistic to believe that by becoming a mass murderer, you are going to be welcomed into heaven or paradise. Because God is everywhere, we have to assume that God was in New York on the day of the disaster. I imagine he wasn't holidaying somewhere. Because of the intense heat from the buildings, people were being forced to jump from the windows to their deaths. Here is a good chance for God to help these people. He can simply reach out his hand and lower them to the ground. History shows he didn't, and so many people lost their lives. There was an Irish priest giving sacrament to one of the victims, and he also became a victim himself as part of the building collapsed on top of him. Many heroic firemen lost their lives. Many were religious. It doesn't make any sense to believe that God was helping on the day of the disasters in New York. At the end of the day of 9/11, Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York, gave a speech, and at the end of the speech he said, "God bless America." A few days later, George W. Bush, the then President of the United States of America, also gave a speech, And at the end of the speech he said, "God bless America." Surely I'm not the only one to think this is crazy thinking. God was not blessing America on the day of the disaster. It is not realistic. It is not logical. It is not intelligent. It is time the world leaders of our population became realistic. I call this flawed intelligence, and millions, if not billions, of people suffer from this condition. They can be otherwise intelligent, logical, and realistic people, but when it comes to religion, all of a sudden their logic is just thrown out the window. Let's test to see how logical we all are. This is a very simple equation. 1 times 1 equals 1. You, one person holidaying in one country at any one time. You cannot, for instance, be holidaying in America, Australia and England all at the very same time. One person in one place at any one time. I'm sure most people would agree that so far this is logical. One God in 7 billion places, controlling 7 billion events, listening to 7 billion people's prayers, all at the same time. It's a mathematical impossibility. I repeat that. It is a mathematical impossibility. And yet most of the world is walking around saying there is only one true God and He is everywhere. He is powerful, He is controlling everything. It does not make sense. It is not logical. It is not realistic. We all know our beloved Superman cannot be everywhere, saving everyone all at the same time. As good as he is, he can't be everywhere all at the same time. The same applies to our imaginary God. He cannot be everywhere, saving everyone, controlling everything all at the same time. He actually belongs with the rest of our superheroes. Who will save us today? Superman, Batman, Phantom, or maybe our latest hero, Harry Potter. Allowing an imaginary superhero to divide our human community is a sad reflection of what religion has done to our human intelligence. I hope that as a species we are capable of improving our ability to face reality. Fooling yourself or letting someone else fool you is not going to solve the world's problems. It would be a great help if parents stopped letting religious leaders dope their children up on religion. Future generations of humans are relying upon us being logical and realistic about global warming and population growth. We need 7 billion people to realise we need to be responsible citizens when it comes to bearing children. I have faith that as a human family we can solve many of the world's problems if we just use our common sense.